Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's regular EV Dad here, John, and more importantly,
Joe from JKEV.
And whilst we never met each other in real life, we communicated frequently over the past couple of weeks, not through the social media platform that you're aware of, but through PlugShare, because that's what geeks do. Kind of interesting. We'll talk more about it, but we both did cross-country road trips. We never met each other. We kind of crossed each other somewhere in the middle of the country, but we just kept seeing one another's PlugShare check-ins. So look, a little bit about what we're planning. We want to do this as a bit of a series. We have shared, but very different experiences, very different lives. I'm doing this from the fully furnished EV Dad studio that is the corner of my daughter's bedroom. Remember, if you are a man, this is the only time you get to see it and live. And you're doing this from your soon-to-be remodeled studio, I guess would be a way to put it.
Home office, studio, whatever it needs to be.
I like it. Yeah, the home is the new office and vice versa. So look, I thought what we'll do, if it's all right with you, this will be part one, and then this will be posted wherever you saw this, and part two will be on the other person's channel. So we won't tell you where that is right now because we haven't worked it out. So let's start off with you. When did you? First of all, which ID4 did you get? When did you get it? And any options and why did you choose it?
So we ordered the first edition in dusk blue. We ordered it in September within about 30 minutes of reservations being opened. Our car arrived in the US in late March. We took delivery April 22nd, so late April.
Nope. Is this? I got to ask the question: was this your first time buying a car you'd never driven before?
We did drive it before we took delivery, but yes, definitely never bought a car online like that before. Never paid MSRP for a car either, as well. We used to have a Chevrolet Volt with a V, the plug-in hybrid, and we also currently still have a Kia Niro hybrid. Those are great cars, but we finally took the plunge into a fully electric vehicle.
That's interesting. Yeah, paying list is a new experience. I'll say that. I'm not quite as brave as you. I'll be honest with you. Mine was a slightly strange journey. Strange is kind of my default. I paid a lot of tax last year, and I didn't want to. I wish I hadn't had to. I mean, I don't mind paying my own way, but I used to travel for work so much, and then I didn't, and it hurt. And so I decided, I knew it was time for me to replace my car. I bought years ago, I had a BMW i3, and the Tesla Model 3 wasn't going to work for me because the trunk, that's just, if you need to carry a body and it's a small person, that's fine, but it's no practical use whatsoever for our lifestyle, with kids and dogs and stuff like that. And the Model Y was too far out, and then COVID happened, so I had a Fiat 500e as a runaround just for going to work. My commute's only 12 miles each way, and so nothing. And I could go all the way from where I live in San Jose up to San Francisco in it, as long as I had 3 hours to recharge to come back, as long as I didn't run the air conditioning and I didn't go over 60 miles an hour. As long as I did that, it was absolutely fine. Kind of weird going from an i3 to a 500e. But it didn't cost me anything. I sold it for what I paid for it. But I needed to replace that because we were planning these road trips, and I wanted to, I needed a new car. I didn't want to get a regular, like an Atlas VW, which was what I was looking at. I don't know about you, but the value proposition for the Y just wasn't there for me. Loved it. I think the Tesla Model Y is fantastic. I know this is a first world problem, but the lack of credits, I mean, that was just a lot of money for not a huge amount of usable space. The value prop just wasn't, that frunk isn't worth 10 grand basically.
Even more. I mean, I had placed an order on a Model Y last year, and after crunching the numbers and seeing that the credit wasn't going to be back for them by the time I needed to purchase, I mean, right now, currently, here we are in July 2021, the Tesla's over $52,000 for a Model Y, and the ID4 fully loaded was $44,000. So we're $8 grand cheaper before the credit.
Yeah.
Just throw 7,500 on top of it, plus possibly some local incentives depending on where you might live. And then you throw in the 3 years of free charging. It's a substantial value proposition.
Yeah, and you're in Michigan, right? Or Illinois? I always forget.
Chicagoland, yeah.
Chicagoland. I forget it's its own state. Can you tell he's a colonial? A little bit. We missed each other because I was in the Chicago area for 10 days or so as part of this road trip. But whenever I go through Chicago, it's either 95 degrees or 2 degrees. I've never been there at a sort of a nice even 63 and change. I seem to miss that. What is that? 2 days of the year that you get that?
Yeah, I think tomorrow is one of them. Tomorrow's going to be in the 70s, but today's 92. So yeah, and sticky as can be.
Yeah, that's the thing I did not. Had a great time there, but our last day was 93. And I think I put this in the road trip video. It was 93 degrees, but it was 80% humidity. That was. I don't like it when my underwear could be considered a dim sum cooking environment. That's not good for anybody. So what state incentives, if any, do you get for in your part of the world?
Unfortunately, where we are, there's nothing. It's actually more like a tax. Normal license plates are $150 a year, but for electrics, they're $250 a year. So Illinois is in the business of penalizing EV adoption.
Well, yeah, and you have a lot of toll roads as well. I found that out the hard way. You don't, so you do have to pay for for fantastic roads.
And the roads aren't even owned by the state. The state sold them.
Well, that's we should probably stay away from the politics. I found that the comment. I found that. If you're not a fan of neoliberalism, colonialism, then don't go near the comment section. Yeah, Well, you see, we're somewhat blessed here in the independent Communist Republic of California. Obviously, we, assuming you qualify, we get the $7,500 tax credit. But then I picked up a $1,500 point of sale rebate. Which I actually used as part of my down payment as well as the proceeds of selling the car, and then the regular $2,000 EV credit as well, and then we'll get that. I'll get that at some point when the California DMV pulls its finger out. I'll get the HOV stickers as well, but that was the thing for me. It was we'll get into the details of the vehicle in a minute, but essentially I'm getting a full small, I think everyone's got their own view of what a full-size SUV is, but I'm getting an SUV vehicle with enough room for the family, the dogs, and everything else. And by the time all of the taxes and rebates have been processed, it's going to be $33,000. I mean, I can't ignore the difference between that $50,000 Tesla and that $30,000. And like you said, that's before you get to the Electrify America free charging, which is a double-edged sword because the more miles you put on it for that free charging, the greater your depreciation. I mean, it's free.
Yeah.
I know what you do for a living. I mean, you should know there's no such thing as free. You'll have to pay for it later. But it is a real situation. So look, value was part of it. Could I ask you, what is your family situation? How many of you are there? Why did you get this vehicle? What are you using? What's your family situation as far as you're comfortable with, and how do you use the vehicle, not just for road trips, but on a daily, weekly basis? What does your life look like?
So I'm married. So it's just the two of us, no kids yet. Currently, we just switch off using it since I'm still working from home. But once I go back to work, I'll be commuting a little over 50 miles each day. So, I mean, the cost comparison compared to like a RAV4 or some other comparably equipped vehicle, from a price point, it's cheaper after all the credits. And then when you start calculating the fuel cost, which around here is well over $3.20 a gallon, it's a substantial savings on as a commuter vehicle.
Just bear with me 2 seconds. Let me just tell my wife, he's only paying $3.20. I know, they're basically giving it away for free. I know. My family in Wyoming, don't understand why we live here. They could replace their water system with gasoline as far as they're concerned. It's cheap enough. No, it's a real issue. And do you have solar or anything like that? Are you making your own gas?
We aspire to have solar someday, but at this point we do not. We just moved into our house, and as you can see, renovations are underway.
So you want to get doors, and then maybe.
It was kind of flip a coin whether the doors were more important than the solar, but.
Well, you're doing it the right way. My wife was furious because I signed the paperwork on the solar installation the day after we actually bought the house. And my wife did comment that perhaps it would have been a good idea to also sign the contract with the contractor to get the plumbing done, as when we took over the house, there was only one functional tap upstairs. And the master bathroom suite looked like it might end up in the garage any day. It was, my priorities were somewhat skewed. Your wife did well. She got one with a good head on the shoulders, that's for sure. So you ordered it online, and I'll come to my process in a minute, but how was Volkswagen with the process between, because it's not Tesla, you have to go through a dealer at some point. How did you find that process from ordering to the information you got from Volkswagen, the progress of your order, and then when the dealer stepped into the chain? How did you find that?
It worked about as well as it could have been. I've seen some horror stories online of other people kind of being bullied into buying extra packages with the car, stuff like that. As far as for me, I put down the initial $100. Then I think around February or so, I had to put down another $400. So that was the $500 down payment. I think you would pay pretty much upfront if you ordered one today. Mm-hmm. And the dealer contacted me a couple of times when they had vehicles available to test drive, to kind of, or at least sit in at a minimum. Mm-hmm. And they were pretty helpful throughout the process. I financed the vehicle through VW, and they had a predetermined rate, which was fairly competitive with other EVs out there. So I thought it was about as good as it could have been, given that it was still going through a dealer.
And did you consider any other? I mean, we talked briefly about the Model Y. Did you consider any other vehicles, hybrid or full electric or otherwise?
Since we have the Kia Niro, we knew we always would have that hybrid around. We do aspire to at some point be fully electric in the family. But as far as for this vehicle, I basically was looking between the Mini E or SE, mm-hmm. The Mustang Mach-E, a couple of the Teslas. And when the price came down to it, it was hard to beat the value the Volkswagen had. I mean, the Mini's pretty good price, but I just didn't want a car that I was going to have to charge pretty much every day or every other day. I like the idea that I can drive this car all week, plug it in on the weekend, no worries.
No, I agree with you there. I come from minis, as it were. I had a yellow Mini One diesel back in the UK before I moved to the US, and I got 65 miles to the gallon out of that thing. It's and I always forget whether the British gallon is smaller or bigger than but anyway, it's still 60 and change. And that was not driving it like a nun. I mean, that was doing 150 miles from Leeds in the north of England down to London each week and back. But that thing, it pulled hard. It had so much torque, it pulled harder than a Cooper S. I absolutely loved it. And when my first car I bought here, once I got my green card and everything situated, and it was a Mini Cooper Club and a Cooper S, and because we talked about gas prices at the top, and I didn't have to care, given the difference in price between here and Europe. $3.20, I'd pay that gladly. I'll give you a pint of blood with it as well, and still save money on what I would pay for gas in the UK. But I love the SE, and the reviews were fantastic, and I love the Mini experience. I mean, it's a street legal go-kart, but I just thought it was just too much of a compromise. It was still a gas car with batteries in the transmission tunnel. It wasn't. I just thought they squandered an opportunity. They could have taken the BMW i3 platform, and that carbon tub chassis, and just redefined an electric Mini, as opposed to, oh no, it's the same as a regular Mini, but while one of them will do 350 miles, this one will only do 100 miles. And then I know that it's a limit of chemistry. If you only have a 100-mile battery, you can only charge at 50 kilowatts. You can't, the heat dissipation and that. But I just thought they'd had all these years with the i3. They could have gone further. Look at what they even the Bolt can do, 200 and odd miles. It just seemed strange that Mini would bring something so beautiful but lackluster to market at such a time. It just a waste.
It's even more of a disappointment that they had a lease program about 10 years ago, and I think that one actually had a bigger EPA range than the new one today, or darn near close, that it shouldn't be that.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, because the old ones were not fancy chemistry. I mean, I remember a friend of mine actually had one. Yeah, no. But did you consider that? You mentioned the Mustang. What made you go for the VW over the Mustang? What did it for you?
The free charging definitely made a big difference. There was a little cost difference, but I tended to like the Mustang's looks a little bit more. But driving dynamics actually became a big reason. The brake pedals and all Mustangs, I drove a couple of them just to make sure I didn't get a bad one the first time. It is so touchy. You basically go from no brakes to full lock within like an inch of pedal travel. And some other reviewers have mentioned it on YouTube. I'm surprised that all of them don't.
I think Kyle from Out of Spec Motoring actually mentioned it recently. I think he mentioned it recently on one of on the Inside EV podcast. I think that's where he mentioned it. But he was saying, and he's driven more than a few of them, and he's had a similar experience. This is not. No, the Mustang was the only one I considered, and I was really put off by the dealers. But when I came to, so I wasn't as far ahead of you as you ordered yours in September.
Correct.
Yeah, you see, I literally went from wanting to buying over a period of like a week. I was planning it for a while and making sure my affairs were in order so I could execute, the usual stuff you have to do here in America, like making sure your credit rating is, that they didn't accidentally, see you as being divorced or anything crazy like that. And we'd refinanced our house. Well, we switched them. We did when we bought our house. I was still 7 months into a green card. We didn't get the best rate, so we did I'm just going to call it cleaning, so we could lower our interest rate, a few things, and I need to get all that out of the way and done, and be ready to buy the car. And I looked at the Mustang, and actually it was one of Kyle's videos where Kyle went to pick one up in, I think he did it, picked it up in Wyoming with another YouTuber. Nebraska, that's right. And that got me, and I started seriously looking, because I just wanted the long range rear wheel drive. I'm not, I don't need 4-wheel drive. Even if I go to Tahoe, I'm not going to need 4-wheel drive. I'm not that adventurous. But all the dealers around here were just taking the piss. I mean, how many different ways can you call it scalping? Market adjustment fee, dealer realization fee, mama needs new shoes fee, and it was anywhere between 5 and it was so blatant. Like, they never put an upcharge on the standard range. You knew what was going to be lying around the showroom for a while, but if it had the long range battery, $7,500 on top easily. And you just think, where I live, there are a lot of idiots. I'm one of them, who will pay more. We refer to the Tesla Model 3 here as the California Camry for a reason. But the Ford dealers were just, it was nuts. And then you mentioned, we've seen it with the Volkswagen, but Volkswagen actually seem to, I mean, they lay down the law. I noticed they said if they've pre-ordered, you don't mess around with them. They were their head of what's his name, Dustin Krause, that came out and said, no, if they've pre-ordered it, don't you go loading it up with all your options and family services and stuff like that. He was quite clear. If you took it into stock, they could make their choices, and they did. I wanted to buy mine. I was good friends. I was working with somebody on restoring a Mark II Golf, because European, and I'd become friends with the tech at Santa Cruz Volkswagen, and I wanted to buy it from them so I could take it to him for servicing. But they said, yeah, but $5,000 adjustment fee for the Volkswagen. I was like, huh. And then Dublin had a first edition, somebody canceled, and they said, you can have it. And they would take my financing through one of my clients, ironically, as a credit union. And it does good to, give some business back. You buy $3 million of my software, I'll borrow 50 grand from you.
Something else to note, actually, as far as pricing goes, Volkswagen is the only company I've ever seen that gives you a discount for being an early adopter of a vehicle. So if you build the same car as a first edition now as a Pro S with gradient package, I think it comes out to about $2,000 more expensive. Whereas if you were buying the Mach-E, you can buy a regular long-range battery with the premium interior, and I think that comes in at like $4,000 or $5,000 cheaper than a first edition.
I was impressed with the packaging. The part of me, ironically, would have liked to have got the smaller wheels, the 19s instead of the 20s for efficiency. But overall, I understand it's marketing, and they're wanting to seed the market, and they wanted to have good-looking vehicles with high specs in as many places as possible, and that makes sense. You're probably familiar with Red Bull, the company.
Yeah.
Their marketing with their sometimes you might think they're just a marketing company with an associated soft drink, but when they launched in the UK, they didn't want to spend a lot of money on marketing, and what they did is they took empty cans, which are going to get recycled anyway, and they took empty cans and they've put them in trash bags in the London Underground, because London Underground, because of bomb threats, has clear trash bags, so you can see what people, and they fill them up. Product placement, it shows that people are drinking these things, and they're drinking in places where you go, and it creates that association. And I think that's a long way of saying, I think that's what Volkswagen were doing the first edition by putting high spec. Normally high spec goes out for high margin. Look at Tesla. You could only buy the long range performance, before you could get the standard range. But Volkswagen have taken the alternative approach, and they've seeded the market. And so when other people are looking at you and I's car, they're looking at a fully equipped car, and we're going to say, oh yeah, and with the credits, it's only $30,000. You know,
yeah.
Clearly it didn't work so well in China, where they've only sold 1,200. But you know, that's a different. You know, I'm sure that will change over time. So just you and your wife, what you know, she saw the car. What did you know? My wife has a very different view of the car than I do. What was it? What did it for your wife? The interior, the amount of space, a mixture? What was it that worked for her?
Yeah, so I personally like the look and feel of the Mustang just because of the sportiness that it had. And so that's where this car, she was sold at first sight, because it's the kind of fits the mold of being that everyday SUV that everyone wants, but being a little bit smoother, a little bit sleeker, having that modern interior that I think everyone kind of strives for in a car these days.
No, I agree with you completely. And so you took delivery, and then did you take delivery and then just go on a 4,000-mile road trip the next day, or how did you? Because we virtually met through seeing each other on PlugShare, and then I saw your road trip videos and stuff like that. So what was your journey to doing the bigger road trips? How long did it take you to get used to it?
So we first drove the car around town, and then did a local Electrify America charge just to see how that would work. Then we tried like a 200-mile round trip, like we went to Milwaukee and back, to see, again, try to get some efficiency numbers to try to see how long it would actually take, how much time would it add to the trip time versus what our hybrid would be. Then we had taken a 400-mile getaway camping trip to Michigan. Again, same thing, just to try to get more data and see how it performed. And it was a very windy weekend, so kind of showed how the efficiency would be affected by that. And after all that, we ran some testing on a better route planner, and then jumped in.
Wow. So I picked mine. I see you. You had what I would call a collaborative experience, and I think I documented some of this on some of my videos. I executed this while my wife was away, just in case she changed her mind, or in case she managed to get me to change mine. I picked up my car, and I knew that between picking up the car, I would have 4 weeks to get used to it before doing the trip from San Francisco to New York and back in 10 days. And yeah. If you're going to do something stupid, plan it. That's all. That's been my guiding philosophy in life. Don't not do it. Just work out how you're going to execute on it, and if you need to, work out how minimize the witnesses. That's always been my philosophy. But I picked it up, and then I took it up to Napa. I took it on 2 road trips, like you said, mini road trips that required a charge. And I want to stay away from charging, because I think if not our next video, certainly a video after that, we need to talk about Electrify America. I think that's a 3-hour show in its own right. But
I think and even more Electrify America and all of the other brands that go along with them. That's another video.
I think so. And so let me just let me finish this and ask you another question. Yeah, I took my car up to Napa. I did a couple of 100 miles in it going up to Napa and back, and then I went over the mountains just to really I wanted to get an idea of how it would perform in more twisty, dynamic circumstances, but also how the battery would perform, and I was blown away by it. This would be your first vehicle with DC fast charging, correct?
Yep.
So without going into too much detail, because I think it's worth it, but overall, I mean, let me ask you, would you have bought this car if it could only charge at 50 kilowatts, not 126 like we currently do?
Absolutely not. And not, yeah, again, not to go into too much detail, but on my trip, I encountered a couple slower chargers that were just 45 or 50 kilowatt chargers. And those are in particular the two times where I found myself walking in circles, you know, trying to make time pass. Whereas most of the stops were just as fast as I could go in, use the restroom, buy a coffee or something. You come back, and before you know it, the car is ready. So,
you know, and so, you know what, I think that is a great jumping off point. And so what we'll say is in our next video, how many miles did you do on your road trip? You went from Chicago to Vegas?
Yeah, Chicago to Las Vegas, then up to Lake Tahoe and back. It was 4,500 miles total.
And over how many days?
10.
Over 10
Same
days.
10 days.
So so ballparking, you must have hit 20 charges at least.
At least, and at least.
Well, ballpark between the, yeah, and so yeah, and I've been doing the numbers on mine. I hit, I did more charges, but I hit 30 charges over the course of my trip. And so I think we'll make our next video, and I'll try, and by the magic of YouTube, we'll try and make that link appear that way. We'll do it on his. I'll do it on his side. We'll see where the mirror falls. We'll make that video the next one that you see. Hey, this was great. Thanks for doing this. This has been fun. I
agree. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. All right, cool. Hey, so I'm Regular EV John. If you've enjoyed this and want to learn more, then please subscribe to my channel. And I talk way more than he does. So I'll say the same thing for him, which is please click on the link to JK's EV's channel and like the video there, and subscribe. Hit the notification thing, and you can find out when we've got more time on our hands than we should have. And and we'll see you then.
Take care.
Take care.